Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Tony Robbins podcast. Tony, thank you once again for joining us.
I'm the token male on this podcast. It's nice for me to be able to come to my podcast here. Seriously, if you're joining us right now, this is our family podcast. This is our modern family. You may have seen our identity podcast or maybe the mindfulness one. This is one where I'm kind of doing the introduction, and I'll do a few minutes, but then I'm going to turn you over to my two favorite ladies in the world who are going to give you their perspective on the subject at hand. And so what is the subject at hand, Mrs. Robbins?
Well,
nice to see you, Mary
nice
B.
to see you,
Nice
Mary
to see you,
B.
Tonester.
We thought it might be an interesting lens to share. There's such an awareness in the world today about mental health. And I thought it might be an interesting perspective. We talked about this, that from each of our reference or from each of our experience, what do you do? What do you do when you feel stuck? When you do, what does that look like? Because that is so relatable for all of us and it looks different. It's such an intimate journey into the interior of one's own mind. You know, I speak for myself and what unearths mind within inside myself or what disentangles could be a different process for yourself or for Mary, and yet human for all of us and relatable for all of us. So I know at events, you certainly do a deep dive on beliefs. That's our little pup, Halo, by the way, our Yorkie, who's joining in.
I'm just going to put her on the couch. Keep going.
And yet what I feel has been so beautiful about these conversations is it feels intimate and at home and possibly just a different lens or perspective or share differently than at an event.
That's why you said to me, she went to me, I'm not telling you the subject, just come. I want to hear your spontaneous response because I over-prepare every time I do an event of any sort. So I think I understand where you're going with this. I want to say one thing to you, which is, when people talk about mental health, you and I have had this discussion before, we're emotional creatures and our minds can create great emotions or negative emotions. Our bodies can go through biochemical changes that then show up in the mind and show up in the emotions. It's a complex process. And you are bouncing back and forth. And I loved your term. Why don't you share it? Because I really liked what you came up with. Do you remember?
This was actually just a couple weeks ago that Tony and I were, it was a Sunday, and we were sitting outside and talking about really mental well-being from the perspective that it's something that we claim for ourselves. And mental well-being includes clarity of mind, flexibility, and a state of well-being, and which comes with an ease. And it's something that we're each empowered with, and it's an inside-out job. Where I look at mental health as something that we're getting assistance, maybe from medication or a therapist or a psychiatrist or something of that nature. Maybe this isn't what we talked about. So if I'm going off on a lens.
No, I'm listening to your definition. I like your definition, actually.
And mental health a lot of times can be looked at as what's wrong rather than what's right. And yet mental well-being, it's a state of well-being. It's a state of ease, a state of clarity of mind.
Life is meaningful. It doesn't mean that your life is perfect. It doesn't mean that your life doesn't have stress. I don't know anybody that doesn't have stress in their life or frustrations or concerns or fears or worries. I mean, that's just part of the human condition at times. Some people live in it and some people develop a pattern. But think in terms of the quality of your life. If you have a sense of well-being, what are your relationships like? How does it feel when you wake up in the morning? When challenges happen, how do you roll or flow? It doesn't mean you don't get stuck, but you don't stay there. And to me, it's a state of readiness. It's emotional fitness as opposed to, emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is really valuable. Intelligence is a resource. You can be really be a smart person and be smart in this moment. But a state of fitness is different. That's why I use emotional fitness when I describe it, is because when you're emotionally fit, you're ready. It's like my muscles are ready. Something happens, I can make it happen. And I think, mental well-being is a state of being where you're able to enjoy your life, you're able to find meaning in your life, and you're able to learn from the challenges, and nothing really, smashes you. If it does, you pick yourself up very quickly. And it's just like being fit. The more mental well-being, the greater the balance of that in your life, the better you can roll. Because listen, the one thing that's universal for all human beings I've found in my life, and I've had the privilege of working with the most successful to the most challenges in 195 countries now, every country in the world. And I can tell you, nobody escapes this world without extreme stress at times. You might think they do. You might think, oh my God, their life is so great because they have this perfect family or this perfect business or this perfect economics or this perfect education or whatever you think it is. But I get to see people from every walk of life in every culture, the most successful, most challenged, and everybody has a place where they get tested. And that's part of being on this gift of this planet where we're here at Earth School figuring out who we are and what we're about, what we are here to contribute and give and create. But I think one of the skills of that mental health, mental wellness, whatever you want to call it, state of well-being, is your ability to deal with challenge quickly and not get stuck. I think stuck states, if I was going to give you my 2 cents for you guys to might want to play here, is to get your perspective on how do you get out of stuck states? Because we've all been there. You're stuck in a relationship and you just can't get through, and you get pissed off or you get frustrated or you get sad. Some people get angry and they fight. Some people run. Some people freeze. Those are the 3 patterns we all have when we get across something that's overwhelming to us. What is your pattern and what can you do so you don't get stuck in that pattern and you get out of it really quick? It's not that you'll never get there. It's just you don't stay there. That's how you have a great quality of life.
That's why I like that word fitness. I mean, you use fitness and you use flexibility. Excuse me.
Flexibility, yes.
Emotional fitness and emotional flexibility. Something about having flexibility in there translates to
Yes.
If you're prone to getting stuck, okay, my goal is flexibility. Asking for a friend. Tone, I have a question for you.
Okay,
Do you mind?
Please.
I'm going to throw it back to the archives here. Remember this guy?
Yes, I do.
I like to call him
Power, my first book I wrote when I was 23.
So my question is, if you have only recently come into the Tony Robbins ecosphere, if you're listening out there, you might have come in through his most recent financial books, or Life Force, the most recent health and vitality and longevity book. But before that, there was this guy. I really like this guy a lot. I love my tiny Tone. And this book in particular, Tone, I have to say, this, I walk away from and I'm like, okay, I can get a grip when I need to get a grip on things. My question for you is, back in these days, you used to use the term internal representations.
Yes.
And I would love to know what that means to you today, because it's not, if you've been to events or things today, you don't use that anymore, but I'm sure it's represented in some other way. But to me, it means what I'm picturing, the story I'm telling, that whole combination of this cocktail of stress that I've somehow gotten myself worked up into this lather of feeling stuck or feeling angry. And I know that I'm representing it to myself that way on the inside. And I know it's not like that in real life.
Yes.
But talk to me through that lens.
Well, my focus in my first book at 23, I was, figuring out how to help people and help myself. I looked at what helped myself, and what helped myself was not getting stuck in my head. It was having a bias for action. So unlimited power is really the capacity to act, to get yourself to take action. So many people live in their head. They go to therapy in their head. They go in circles and nothing changes because it just becomes a circular conversation. And so what do you got to get yourself to act? Well, to get yourself to act, you have to get yourself in a state where you'll do it. So you can take anything and make it represented in your mind as evil or good, as difficult or easy. And the way we represent things is the way we feel. So the example you've heard me use before is going to dinner and you're supposed to meet your spouse, your boyfriend or girlfriend at 7 o'clock at night, and you get there at 7 and they're not there. What do you feel? I ask people. And I ask this in seminars all the time. What do people say? Somebody says, I'm pissed off, and somebody says, I'm worried. Well, it's only 7. What if it's 7:30 though, and they've not called or text? I'm really worried. I'm really angry. And you see division in the room, right? What if it's 8:30 and they've not called and they've not shown up and they've not texted? And the woman says, I'm full because I didn't wait for the bastard, that kind of thing. But the point is, how you feel about that experience. Two people can have the same event, but they don't have the same experience. And it's how they represent it in their mind. Mm-hmm. So one person represents, they don't care, they didn't show up again, they're probably screwing on with somebody else, they're going to be angry. The other person says, what if they're in an accident? So whether they say that or picture it, however they represent it, controls the way they feel, which is your state. And your state controls what you do. So my whole focus was, if I'm going to get you to act, I got to get you in the right state. To get you in the right state, I got to find out what's keeping you from that. And one thing that's keeping you from that is, I would say today, what you focus on, or the meanings you give, because that's a simpler way of describing it. But the actual process is how you represent that situation. You can call it representing it. You can call it what I focus on. You can call it the meaning I give it. Those are the words I tend to use today, because to me, they're simpler. Whatever you focus on, you feel. Whatever you focus on, you don't experience life. You experience life you focus on. If I'm focused on what's wrong, my life is wrong. If I focus on what I love, my life is love, right? That's a different way of representing it. It's a totally different feeling. It'll produce a totally different set of behaviors, and those behaviors will get a different result. But the other thing that affects it, in my model that I talked about there, is the way you use your body. And I think that's where you got to start, because your emotion is controlled by your body. I don't just mean biochemistry from the standpoint of, whether you ate meal or you have low blood sugar or low hydration, which obviously affects people's emotions. Right?
Your wife.
Right?
Your
my
wife.
My wife gets this thing called
Red
hangry.
zone. Red
Physiology
zone.
first is what my motto is. But also when I'm working with people, when somebody gets up and goes, yeah, I know, I need to do this. In that state, they're never going to do it. So I will do something to provoke them, to tease them, to move them, to shift them, where you'll see a change in the tempo of their voice and the way they move, in their facial expression. I'll get them to laugh. I'll do something bizarre, crazy, weird. I will break the pattern of the way they're representing things and the way they're using their body. Because it's the combination of what you focus on, represent, meaning, the story you tell yourself, and what's going on in your body that creates the state you're in. And from that state, all your behaviors come. So to me, I want to answer your question. It really comes down to, yes, the way you represent the world is the way you experience the world. So I ask people, what's life? Oh, it's a test. Well, then what's life like if it's a test? Well, if it's like a test, then it's hard and I got to study and I could fail. Or someone would say, then life's easy because I'm good at tests, right? Depends on the person. Or is life, a battle? Then those people always are looking for someone to fight with. They expect there's going to be a fight. It's always a struggle. And they find a way to make it a struggle, because that's what their body does. And then, is life a party? Is it a dance? Is it sacred? Is it a gift? Like, however you represent life, it'll change completely what you're feeling and what you're doing. So that's what I meant by internal representations. And I use meaning now, and I use focus, because I think they're just easier words. I made things more complex then, I think, to try to prove to myself I understood every aspect of the human mind.
Still a great book.
Thank you. I'm glad you loved
The greatest.
Little Tone.
Tiny Tone.
Well, I appreciated that response. Two things that I noticed at this stage of our life. We've been together close to 23 years. And
24, but who's counting?
24. And what I recognized, the first probably decade or 15 years, we were getting over ourselves, and conditioning comes up, and impressions or expectations and all those dynamics. And at this stage, there's just an appreciation and love, and almost a humor at times that surprises me. And I certainly appreciate if I'm off or stressed, or if you're off or stressed in a moment. We have such an understanding of each other's intent, or such an appreciation of each other's intent.
I never question the intent.
And nor do I. Yeah. And I'm sharing that because those of you that are listening, that's almost there's a larger belief of a knowingness of the allowance or acceptance of the human, what might look like behavior in a moment, but to know the nature of each other, to know the purity of intent, to know the innocence, to know, and behavior can come up and express just like it can for all of us. That's such a benevolent lens and a benevolent way to perceive and experience each other.
Are you thinking of the time when I was talking about your primary question recently?
You told me I shoved it up your ass. Or tush, sorry.
I think ass will probably flow through on this podcast.
Oh, boy.
My wife was telling me what's going on, and I listened for a very, very, very long time. Did I not?
love that we're sharing this
I was
right
sharing
now.
all this, and at the end I said, honey, you might want to consider the possibility that, those you understand, we all have a primary question we ask, and sometimes those questions enhance our life and sometimes they don't. You actually have a primary question that's really beautiful. She asks all the time, where's the good in this? Where's the great in this? And, where's the God in this, really, is what you're asking so much, honey. And it's one of the most beautiful things about you. But in this particular situation, she was stressed. And when you can't meet your primary question, mine has always been, how can I make it better? And if you can't do it, you feel a little crazy inside. I'm not doing it justice here because we have so little time, but I teach it at Date with Destiny. And it's one of the most profound things we teach. And my wife knows it. And so she was really struggling with this. So I said, honey, you might want to realize you're not really asking your primary question here because that's your power. And her response to me was,
well, let's just say that in that moment, I was less keen to entertain what was needed or not needed, or any notion of my primary question. And I absolutely let him know that. So, but what was interesting, not and not in a connected, benevolent way, but what was beautiful, I walked up the stairs and saw myself and witnessed my behavior. And, I brushed my teeth and caught my breath and came back down and met you in the hallway. And I said, Tone, I'm so sorry. I just behaved ridiculous. And what you were offering was actually incredibly kind. And
but my response was laughter, not laughter at you. It was laughter because this is, I think, I don't know where you're going with all this, but I do want to plant the seed because one of the greatest gifts on this planet that God has created for my life and that we've co-created together is our relationship and our family's relationship. The Mary and Billy and our little baby girl and our kids and grandkids. And I think one of the secrets to all relationship is to never question the intent. I know that's hard in the beginning when you're beginning a relationship, and sometimes even harder when you've been around for a while for some people. But you and I both made a decision early on that we knew each other's souls.
Yes.
And that we knew that no matter how things looked on the outside, there was never bad intent. There was never the desire to hurt the other person, and there never has been. And so I adore you. I love you, and I respect you, all the above. So there's no way for me to have a reaction to something beyond a moment, then to realize, and I blame myself. I said, okay, that was probably should have waited a little longer before offering that piece.
Don't try to fix it, Robbins. Don't try to fix it.
I know not to fix things.
Even I know that much.
I know not to fix things, but I thought it'd been long enough that maybe this would be a good piece. But I was wrong, and I actually apologize to you for that.
You did.
So, but it's really, I think, so much of stuckness in relationship. Maybe I bring it up to stuckness again. I'm trying to connect it to his theme. You know me. I'm trying to actually have a through line here, I think comes from the fact that we make up meanings.
Yes.
And the meanings we usually make up, and this is human nature, I've read all kinds of studies on this, where we usually, if someone else does something we don't like, we make up the motive as negative. If we do something that isn't so great, when we're not beating ourselves up, it's like we have pure motives. But I know every motive that drives your soul is nothing but goodness. And yours too, Mary B. And I'm not just saying that because we're all present. That's why we're family. Because we're all here to serve something more than ourselves. And we all love each other completely. And I love our family completely. And that's such a gift because when you have that foundation, all the other things you're going to face in life, you can deal with. And I know not all of you have that yet. And I'm not claiming that you do. But you can claim that kind of relationship with a friend.
Yes.
Most people do it better with a friend than they do it with a loved one, unfortunately, because they have more expectations of a loved one.
Yes.
Friends, they have a bad day. We go, all right, we might not like it, but they understand they're having a bad day. But we do that with those closest to us. Most people would treat strangers better than they would. They'll treat their most beloved. They'll say things than they wouldn't say to a stranger, So I think it's important to not get stuck in made up meanings because there's more on the line.
Yes.
When I get really stressed and when I get really, overwhelmed, which can happen for sure, part of why I stay out of that for the most part is because I'm constantly stacking the good. And recently I saw some friends who, they're not close to us, but people we know. And they were two people that were really lovely and they really, truly fell in love with each other. I think about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, they met at an event. And so that's how I knew them, got to know them because they became platinum partners. And the relationship came to quote unquote a head recently and they're ending that relationship. And I knew it was going to end. It was obvious. And it was because of all the negative stackings, like all the little meanings that people stack. Like if a problem shows up and you just honestly deal with it at the table and you don't just deal with it, you take responsibility, go, listen, I'm feeling this. It's not you. It's probably my own triggers from the past. And you don't make excuses for your triggers. And I just want you to know it's not you. If you deal with things when they're small, it's easy. I always talk about kill the monster while it's a baby. Don't wait till it's Godzilla taking the city, right? But I think one thing that helps my life is we go through more in a week than most people do, in a month or whatever. I mean, the last, 6 days, I went to bed sometime between 6 and 7 a.m. In some cases, I got to be up 3 hours later for another meeting. It's not what I recommend. No. But I'm dealing with people. I'm dealing with people in the Middle East. I'm dealing with people in China. I'm doing all these business portions, and they're complex issues that are being dealt with, and people I'm helping overseas, and someone who's just lost their baby. All these things happen all the time. But what keeps me going is every single day I stack the good. And if I'm ever really stressed, the first thing I do is change my physiology. If I'm really stressed, and by the way, you can be stressed and no longer think you're stressed anymore. Something was stressful and it's over. You've resolved the problem, or you resolved the argument, or whatever somebody went through, but that energy's still in your body. It's there. And so what I'll do is I'll go, what's your thing you tell everybody? My bro, what did she say, Mary? If somebody works at a seminar, we're at an event and it's a real stressful event.
They're crying their eyes out. Their makeup's halfway down their face. All right, go wash your face, brush your teeth, get back in here. You're fine.
That's their standard.
That's her reset. That's her stress cycle completion.
She does it.
She does it and it works for her.
It works for her. She goes up there, like she just said it earlier. When she said she ran up the stairs, one of the stories she told, brushed my teeth, and I came back down a different state, right?
Good to go.
So she knew how to change her physiology first, because your mind is not going to work when you're locked physiologically. And a lot of too many people are locked, or where they're stuck is physical. So for me, if I can't, I jump in water. If I'm not at home, a freezing shower, if I get in it here, I love jumping the cold plunge or the hot water in the cold plunge, anything like that. For me, water temperature change is so radical. Yeah. It'll change things. Or I would just go out and frankly, I'm fairly vocal, no one's around, and I would just give out a good scream of intensity. As loud as I can. It sounds stupid as hell, but I do it. And all that energy gets out of my body, and then the brain resets. I've done that with people in seminars that were just completely stuck. Didn't matter what you asked them, what they did. They were so angry, so harsh to the person around them. And I'll just get them stop and say, I want you to tell me where that is in your body. Find the location. Where's the worst? I'll make the sound of that as loud as you can. No, even louder. And I make them push and push till there's nothing left. And then all of a sudden, boom, their mind works perfectly. They solve the problem. So physiology first. But I think the second thing I want to mention is I understand the power of stacking. So my other thing to do that's easy, there's no temperature change like that. I just literally take out my journal, or I take out my iPad or a computer, and I'll write 20 things that are magnificent in my life. And it always starts with our family. There's no exaggeration to that. And I write down what's magnificent, not what's okay. It's magnificent, right? And I make myself feel and associate to that, because, like I said earlier, you don't experience life. None of us do. We experience life we focus on. And when you're in it, the pattern just stays the same. You think that you're stuck because you think this will never get solved. You're stuck because you think it shouldn't have happened. It's unjust. You're stuck because people didn't support you. You're stuck. You got some meaning that's in your head, and now it's in your body. So you change your body, and then instead of trying to deal with the meaning, most people don't overreact to their kids because of what happened this time. It's because it happened again. Or their husband or their wife, because it happened again. Or somebody at the work, because it happened again. When we overreact, it's because we've stacked negative experiences. So what I do is I stack the positives. And then I also, lastly, I'd say, I pay attention to my language. I grew up in an environment where my parents had a belief that, you just stuck it out and you fought till it was done, and you could say anything, and you said it with total intensity, and they used very colorful language, but you couldn't leave the room. If you left the room, the relationship was over. So I saw some battles. So I never threw things or broke things or did anything of that nature, because I saw that. But I certainly borrowed the language patterns I grew up with. Yeah. And then I came and fell in love with this little creature over here. And then you too, Mary B., where, Bonnie Pearl's most intense words often is sugar and shoot. And she's certainly capable of the other words, don't get me wrong. But the majority of that, she uses these words that soften. And you do too. You have all these sweet words. And so one of the things I notice is I'm really exhausted, really stressed. My language patterns change. I'll curse, on something, not at a person, just in the situation. Sometimes I'd use that for intensity. Shoot isn't strong enough for what I want to express in a situation or move something. But it's good to notice your language patterns, because if you soften the language patterns, like, this is stupid, this is crazy, versus, this is curious, or isn't this wild, or, isn't this interesting that we're doing this pattern again, as opposed to what the hell is wrong?
Tone, I like when you give us I'm fascinated.
That's right. It's really fascinating to me, as opposed to what other F word I would have used in the old days. So I just think those are three things to look at. Your physiology, look at your stacking and unstack by stacking new things, and then language. But I'd love to know, Mary B., what do you do when you're getting stressed? Sincerely, what do you do to get out of it? Because you do a great job of it. You understate your value in that area.
I'm so glad you mentioned stacking, because that's one thing I learned from you that I'd never had the understanding of before. But yeah, when it feels overwhelming, when I have the sensation or the feeling that stuff is on top of me, to use a terrible metaphor. Life feels too much to handle. It's because, I have all these things stacked. Or sometimes it's not even a whole bunch of things. It's just, you also tell me sometimes things have to be decoupled.
Yes.
And so sometimes I'm just like, I have this thing, and they're not even related, but they're happening together. And it feels like this goes, if this goes, that goes.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes just pulling two things apart is enough for me to just get the spaciousness I need to come back into sanity.
Yes.
To be like, okay, I'm not completely, my brain isn't completely useless because I'm just so.
Yes. You're also good at gratitude, Mary B.
Yeah.
I think that's when you say that's fair, I mean, one of the reasons you're beloved by some people is you're so incredibly loving and sweet to everybody, Mary B. Even times when it's difficult, your nature is, you hold an identity for yourself as being a good person to your core, and you are. But I think because of that, you constantly build gratitude. And I think that's the thing that I've seen you come back to.
Yep.
You pull the thing apart and it's like, no, this is all part of the process, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this and this. How you speak that way, I think that's one of the patterns, at least I observe in you. Is it true?
Yeah, those big beliefs. Like, I think it's so helpful. I think there's a section in here of beliefs that, I'm making this up, but like these aren't in there, but my go-to ones are like, everything happens for a reason.
That's
or
right.
just something that no matter what, knowing that I actually really do believe that with conviction, that kind of, okay, if I really believe that, which I do, then this too shall pass, then whatever it is.
I saw my Pearl and I were talking about this the other day when we were having lunch outside. And I was saying, I think it was a group of actors. I think Tom Hanks was one of them, a group of them. They were all very successful actors, very successful men in the business, at least. There weren't any women in the group. And they were like, as men sharing, which men don't usually do, like, what's the one thing you wish you would have known that would have made your life a lot less stressful? And Tom Hanks said, this too shall pass. And you should have seen all their heads going up and down. Sly Stallone was here the other day, and we were having some really cool conversations. He's one of the coolest people I know. He's just a really amazing human being, and all the things he's gone through, people have no clue. But it's that same thing. Like, we could all relate to that. We had this cool dinner recently that I got invited to. It was like John Bon Jovi's a friend of ours. He's a great rock and roller, if you're not familiar with him. Really brilliant guy, been in the business like 35 or 40 years.
Is that how young our audience is? We have to pre-frame Bon Jovi? Keep going. Keep going. I just can't hold this in.
I don't know. I hope I know he is. He's going to go on, I think he's going to go on tour again for his 35th or 40th. I forget which one it is. But he called up and said, we want to have this goats dinner. And I said, what's a goats dinner? Greatest of all time. He goes, I'm not going to tell you I'm the greatest of all time, but in my category, I'm one of those. He goes, you are in your area. He goes, so I want you and I. And he goes, I want Tiger Woods. I want Tom Brady. And he said, I want Tom Ford from fashion. And I want Slide. All get together and have dinner. So we had this really cool dinner. And it was a privilege even to be there. But what struck me is what you thought people talk about. I'm not going to reveal anything. It was shared there. It was private, of course. But what I noticed, number one, was the most important thing that people were dealing with all they've succeeded in their life was relationship. Every single one of them, to some were really great, some more challenging at times. And then also was just all the pathways we've gone through, all the challenges we all faced, and how much we value them now. How you look back on them and go, thank God that happened. I can see that made me so much stronger. It made me care so much, made me create so much more. And I hope you tell us what you do. And you came up with what you told me you do. And I never even knew this. And I've been with you 20 years. This internal thought you have that you use. I thought it was beautiful. It was not this too shall pass. It was a different one for you. Will you share it?
Yes, of course. I want to mention one thing, Mary. Another thing that you do that I find ever so beneficial and useful is when you get enough clarity of mind, you use humor. And you'll mimic back and replay back the circumstance. Not harsh, sarcastic, but tongue-in-cheek, exaggerated. And that will invoke a laughter. And that,
it feels like the only thing sometimes that can move me out of fear.
Mm-hmm. I see that. Anyways,
it feels like a safe way to get out of fear.
Well, it's an awesome technique. It certainly works for this family. So it works for us.
But I just wanted to mention that because sometimes that gets
that's a beautiful
missed.
Observation. That's true.
Is the gift of humor.
What do you do when you start to feel stuck, honey?
Oh gosh.
What do you do?
Well, you've both talked or mentioned the fact that I go up and wash my face and brush my teeth. I mean, I don't do it every time, but the purpose of that is to get some distance so I can self-reflect.
Yes.
So I can recognize what possibly I've missed. so I can perceive,
With fresh eyes.
with fresh eyes, but
fresh
also
heart.
myself.
Yeah.
Because usually if I'm upset, I'm seeing it outside myself. And so I get distance so I can actually self-reflect and see myself in it. And then when I recognize that it's me, because it is always me, I from there look to act, and it usually looks like I'll reach out and just like I did in that moment and say, I'm sorry, I was behaving ridiculous, and thank you for knowing my intent. But I'll usually look to apologize to clear that energy.
You do.
The other thing, then, if I'm really lock stuck, I will remind myself that all is well.
That's it.
Yes, I'll remind myself
And
that
how do you do that?
all is well, and I'll use an affectionate name. Sometimes I'll say sweetheart. Sometimes I'll say all is well, Bonnie Pearl. All is well. And I'll usually look outside if I'm not outside, just to broaden perception, because all is well.
Yes.
All is well. The waves are crashing. The wind is blowing. Birds are coming and going. Like life is happening. All is well. No matter what I'm believing and thinking, or no matter how acutely tense of stress that I might be experiencing, that's in my own internal view. Because if you look out around you, all is well. Yes. Life is happening. People are laughing. People are walking. People are talking. And that is always so humbling. And so that is definitely an internal lens of a reminder that no matter what is happening, all is well. So definitely all is well. Many times I'll ask myself a question, what have I missed? And if I'm not able to, say if I'm really stuck and I'm blind, a lot of times I'll come to somebody else that I love, and I'll say, look, in this circumstance, what am I missing? Because I actually really have a hunger to see, to understand, and specifically to see myself, because that's the only thing that I can shift and change. As you know, inquiry of the 4 questions of, is this true? Byron Katie's, that I find that ever so useful. Or even sometimes if mind is really going and I'm feeling like, ego is just justifying and rationalizing and really building an architecture inside my mind, I'll be like, okay, what am I actually even believing? And I'll just write down whatever that is, the one statement, and just look at it. And it looks ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Because in the moment,
the
moment that I can actually visually see it, and then it's like, it just starts unraveling actually in that moment, because when it's just happening inside mine, it's happening, ego's building it so quickly that it helps me to fix it on paper. And then I look to take responsibility. And that's
freedom.
Completely selfish.
Yeah.
I want to clear it up. I want to clear this space inside of myself and inside of anybody that unintentionally I may have hurt by my tone of voice or intensity or lack of awareness.
We all get stressed. We all get overwhelmed. We all misinterpret things. We all have triggers from our past. But our job is not to say, you're triggering me. Our job is to notice those triggers and get rid of them. Stop engaging in them. And sometimes that takes a little time to do, but over the years, if love is the guiding force, we've done that. And if you ask me what the greatest gift of my life is, there's no question it's our relationship and our family. I've had the privilege of working with people from every walk of life, millions of people, and I have the privilege and pleasure of knowing that I've been able to help a lot of people in a lot of different ways that I'm grateful for and proud of. But there's nothing more important than those you love most, and you having something that continually grows in its depth of love and its depth of appreciation, its depth of gratitude, and its depth of respect. But I think you have to start there and enhance it. It's not some place that you get to someday because people treat you a certain way.
Yes.
It's a line in the sand that you set because it is so important.
I agree. I love you.
I love you too, sweetheart.
I'm curious, don't you feel, honey, for those that are listening right now, maybe going through a really challenging time or a really painful time, or they're stuck, or maybe they just got a diagnosis, or they have a health challenge, or their beloved does, or possibly they just lost their job. Hindsight is so beautiful because you have broader perspective. And
yes. So we've all experienced loss at a physical level. We've all experienced disappointment. We've all experienced, relationships that we thought were one way, they became another. We all experienced people we thought were friends that maybe weren't. So disappointment and pain are part of life. It's what we do with them, and we're all going to feel them. And I think it's important when they happen to let it touch you.
Yes.
My friend Jim Rohn, my teacher, was one of my great teachers, and he always said, let life touch you. Don't let it kill you, but let it touch you, because out of that pain, you develop drive. So I think everything has its purpose in your life, and that's where that belief of, life is truly happening for me, even though it doesn't feel like it, even though it doesn't look like it. It's happening for me, not to me, but it's my job to figure out how it's happening for me. I think everyone has what I call a global solution. Something when you're finally willing to let go of your pain, no matter how bad the pain is, a death, a loss of a job, a disappointment, a relationship end, there's something, the global solution is, what do you value more than your pain? If a woman, mom loses her kid in a drunk driving accident, it's horrific, but the one that makes it through is the lady who started MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, because she just took that and said, my legacy is going to make sure that my child's life had meaning, and I'll make sure millions of other children don't die. That's inspiring. That's beautiful. It's painful, but it's beautiful. In my opinion, that's God. That's grace. That's the invisible hand that's guiding us to make our life about something more than ourselves. And I think that's the way out of pain. What do you value more than your pain? Because you'll hang on to your pain until there's something more value. You might value your kids not feeling your pain and taking on responsibility for your pain. So it's like, I got to get my act together because I don't want my kids to feel this. Or someone dies in your family and you say, listen, if I fall apart, everybody else does. You're the one person that pulls it through. I think we all have that capability. Not all of us use it. And part of that, I think, also is your own beliefs about yourself and your own expectations of yourself. It's not that you're perfect, not that you're always going to have the answer, but that, again, you have a responsibility to something more than just yourself. I think that's the missing piece for a lot of people.
I'd love to put a frame on it too, Tone, as long as we're going into this place. And we have nosed at it, but just to be really direct around it, we've recently, even in our own family, friends of ours, close to home, we've had people that have taken their own lives much too soon. And I'm wondering, especially just in this world after COVID, we're so lucky. We have so many people in our lives on any given day. There's 25 people in this house by the time we have our first coffee in the morning, not you, thank God. But I feel for people that just feel alone. And I'm wondering if you could offer anyone, if anybody out there is listening, and we've talked about this, we've all had days where it's just man, I don't know what to do. I can't do this. I don't know, where, if you're in that place, if anyone out there listening is in that place, anything where to start? Where do they start?
That's a great question. You got to start where you are. I know that sounds stupid and trite, but it's true. You're not going to start with something way beyond where you are right now. So you got to see where you are. If you've been through enough, I got a call yesterday, and I spoke to someone today who's a very dear friend, and they just lost their baby. And then, so that's tough enough. We've been through that several times. We know what that means for someone, so you can be there to comfort them. But then they just found out the reason they lost the baby is the mom has cancer. And so we found that out today. And their dog died about 5 minutes before they found out the cancer piece. I mean, you can't make up these stories, right? So what do? Well, the first thing is you got to have compassion for yourself, for that person. You got to connect emotionally, even with yourself, and give yourself room to feel whatever you're going to feel. And then you can't just stay there, though, or you'll just wallow and suffer. And you can, but it's not my choice. When it comes, let's talk about the specific suicide situation you're talking about, because that's been something I've had some expertise in, obviously. And as you said, there's been some friends of yours, a friend of yours that just recently took their own life, and the devastation that does to the family. The one thing I remind people is everybody blames themselves, but we're not God. You don't know what's going on there. Well, I could have prevented it. I could have done this. I could have done that. Or people say, you would have done that because you got the skill. I said, well, maybe. I certainly have the skill in this area, but there's no guarantee on anything because we have free will. And there are certain people who can do it. You got to say, what's the real challenge? The real challenge is that people today don't have a compelling future. If I asked you, what's the vision for the United States? The vision is division right now. The vision is, the world's going to go to hell. The environment is being destroyed. By the way, these are exaggerations. They're stories, they're narratives, but people change your story, change your life. When the story is it's over, when the story is there's no great reason to live, when the story is there's nothing compelling to move towards, we can all deal, I've said this a million times, but it's true, we can all deal with a really, really insanely difficult today if we have a compelling tomorrow. But if we don't have a compelling tomorrow, that's why so many kids are saying, I don't want to have children. It's absurd because someone's convinced them that the world's going to be destroyed in 12 years. It's totally bull. We all know it's bull. Anybody who's done their homework knows it's bull. But people love exaggerations to promote whatever agenda they have. And then people buy those agendas. So invariably, when somebody takes their own life, it's because they have no compelling future. They think that dying would be less painful than living. And you are not responsible for that. And you can't even be responsible for that if it's your own child, because people can make those choices. Now, can you do things to help yourself and help other people get out of that? The answer is yes. I think maybe the answer is in those situations, you got to bring people together. You got to love everybody. You got to have the compassion. And then you got to think about what do we do to honor this person so that there's something meaningful that comes from it. And then how do we prevent this as family, as society, is that we notice when people don't have that compelling future and we question it, because all a belief is an unquestioned thought. You've told yourself something over and over again until now you feel certain about it and people act upon what they feel certain about. When I see people that are suicidal, what I do is take away their certainty that dying will be less painful than living. When you switch that, they won't do it. We all, as human beings, we move away from massive pain, what we associate pain to, and we move towards whatever we think is pleasure or will be a lot less pain. And so the meanings, those internal representations we make are what control that. So right now in society, there's not a lot of vision for people. That's our job as parents, as family members, as friends. And we're not going to be perfect, and we can't know what's going inside with everybody. So I wish I had a magic wand I could say, here's the answer. There isn't. The answer is for each of us to take responsibility for ourselves and become an example of what's possible with deep love and consideration for those around us, and knowing that everyone's going to do things at a different tempo in a different way, and they have different goals. But helping people finding a meaningful life is possible in the middle of concentration camps. If you know somebody who's really depressed, my favorite book of all time, at least one of them, is Man's Search for Meaning. We're actually going to make the film. We're in the middle of finding the right writer for it as we speak, but we bought the rights to it. If you haven't read the book, you must read it. Viktor Frankl, one of the heroes of my life, because here's a man who's in a concentration camp and witnessed his family being murdered in front of him and decides that he's going to find a way to figure out why certain people make it and others don't. And that will to live comes by having a compelling future. And for the Jewish people, for those that made it, it was that vision of, I'm going to make it through this and I'm going to tell this story so it never happens again. Never again was the cry. But the difference between somebody who just went for the moment of survival, getting the food, getting the cigarette, getting something for their need, he knew those ones were going to die quickly. The ones that were thinking about the future made decisions differently. And I think we all need to create a compelling future, a meaningful future, and appreciate where we are today and give ourselves room to learn and grow in this experience called life, this earth school, so to speak.
Well, thank you. And when I think of originally what was the intention of these conversations, it was that people would experience how we relate to each other, the love that's in this family, knowing one day our daughter and our children will listen to this.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And as well, just relating in this humanness and the beauty of this human experience. And to know that that's where we all meet, and we're all walking this path home, and we all have this inner world to understand, to transcend, to find meaning, to appreciate. And, you know, our daughter's just over 2, and there's this little book called The Listening Rabbit. And for those of you that have somebody in your life that maybe is going through a challenging circumstance and you just don't know what to do, I'm going to do a dreadful job of recapping it, but just let me give you the lens of it. There's a little boy that's building this big blocks, and it falls down unexpectedly. And each animal, maybe the bear comes and he wants to rebuild it. And, the kangaroo is like, if you remember it, you can rebuild it back again. But he didn't want to do all these things. And, if you wanted to shout about it, another animal, maybe the bear wanted, if you want to shout about it, and this little boy, his name's Taylor, he didn't want to do all the above. And this little rabbit came and just nestled down beside this little boy and just sat there and said nothing and did nothing. And then this little boy went through all the experience of, he shouted, he wanted, all the things that he didn't want to do, he experienced, and life came to full fruition. And he asked the bunny not to leave. And I don't know why I'm sharing that right now.
And the rabbit listened.
And the rabbit listened, yes. And the rabbit listened is the, thank you, is the whole point of the whole point of it. And I was so touched by the simplicity and yet the beauty. And a lot of times, when we don't know what to do, our presence,
yes,
our presence, our love, we cannot underestimate the
healing power
of love. And love in action sometimes has a non-doing. It can simply just to be with somebody is such an extraordinary gift. And you've held the space and for so many, Tone. And it's such a powerful gift in all the ways, in action and in non-action that you do in this home. Probably more action than non-action, but sometimes those, it's just the power of you are such a beautiful listener. Mary, you are such a beautiful listener. And the gift of that. And so, for those of you that are listening and thinking, well, gosh, I'm not Tony Robbins and I don't know how to do what he does, or I don't have those lenses, just the power, the profound power of love. And every moment of life offers us a moment, an opportunity to possibly love more, not less, no matter what the circumstance. And that alone is a balm. That alone is transformative. And you do that every day. And so the intention of this was to share an inner lens and a relating, a sense of the atmosphere of this home and this family and how it all comes together, and knowing that it's not just the listeners that'll be listening one day, it will be our daughter and our children.
That makes me happy.
And it makes me happy. And I think it's beautiful. And so thank you for coming on this ride of the unexpected journey of maybe not having a plan and a structure where Tony creates tension. I want to be comfortable. I want a candle. I want to wear my burgundy socks.
Incense going.
And I wanted to share this space called home. And so thank you. And
thank you, sweetheart. You create this space called home, you and Mary together. The sounds, the smells, you can't come in our house. Everybody comments about the music. This is amazing. It feels ethereal, or the smells of this place, the flowers and the incense and all those things. I'm always touched by people entering our home because they feel the essence of this family, the love that we all share, but also the little things that you all do to create an environment. I think that's an important thing to think about, is how do we create the environment that nurtures the best in you and the best in your family? How do you create an environment that nurtures playfulness and joy and love?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the Tony Robbins podcast.
Anytime, Tony Robbins.
But it's been a great visit. I love you both so much. And those listening, I hope there's some seeds in here for you. If you start to feel stuck, that you be a little nicer to yourself, a little kinder to yourself, because kindness can also break the pattern. It's not always easy, especially those of us that are tough on ourselves. But as the years go by, you begin to realize you're wasting your time beating yourself up, because all it does is lower your energy, and a lower level of energy leads to more mess ups. Better to probably just appreciate these are part of the dynamics of being human, and then just see what works for you. Is it changing your body really in a strong way? Is it writing down all the good stuff? Is it remembering some core belief like it all happens for a reason and purpose and it serves me, or all is well, life's always happening for me, not to me? Some core belief that goes beyond. Or is it some global solution, something that you value more than your pain, something or someone you value more than your pain, something you want more than your pain? And then just realizing that we're all here continuing to learn, and that as long as we continue to learn, as the months and the years go by, you get stronger, you get wiser. It doesn't mean you don't have challenges, but you have better quality ones. That's really the goal. When I've always said, Date with Destiny, the biggest problem people have is they think they're not supposed to have any. And the truth is, problems are a sign of life. So if you have a problem, it's just calling to you. But hopefully you trade your old problems for better quality problems, different quality challenges, and we continue to grow. Because if you grow and you give, when you grow, you have something to give. You grow and give, then and life is really meaningful.
It is.
And love is the most meaningful thing of all. And it's hard to love at a deep level if you've also not gone through pain or suffering or disappointment or frustration, because then it's just fake. It's just like chemistry. When you get beyond chemistry to something that has depth, that's when life really has that magnificent feeling where you feel like it's all a blessing.
It's all a blessing.
Isn't it?
It is indeed.
Love you guys.
Good talk.
Love you listeners. I don't know you personally, but I hope we meet you someday. And we hope some of this serves you when you get into a tough position, or you can use this to help somebody else. Blessings to you.
So I had an idea to begin this portion of this podcast episode. I would like, do you want to hear it?
I'd love to.
Okay, great. I would like to invite everyone out there listening, watching, to invite into your mind a single thought. Focus on just one thought. Any thought, pick one, just one, and focus on that thought. And it might be happy, sad, hungry, inspiring. It could be all sorts of emotions, but the truth is, this is what we know, that just that one thought caused a whole grip of effects to go through your body, whether it's hormones and neurochemicals, your heart rate fluctuates, your blood flow changes, all from one single thought. So then imagine this parade of thoughts that just marches through our minds all day. One of my favorite spiritual teachers, his name is Richard Rohr. He's also like a recovery coach. He says, like a monkey ceaselessly swinging from branch to branch, our mind ceaselessly jumps from thought to thought. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today. What do you think about all that, Sage Robbins?
Well, I certainly have some monkeys in my mind that can swing branch to branch. It's so interesting. We can certainly all get stuck. I'll speak for myself in the labyrinth of mind. And how do we find our way through or out or back home, although we never really left?
I think you bring up such a great point, because mental health certainly is a hot topic today. And what does that mean? Like, okay, our mind, our mentality, it's thoughts. Those thoughts, that rules our entire life. And I don't think I understood that, honestly, till recently. When you first come into the idea that, yeah, like, what is that little voice in my mind that's like constantly in there telling me what to do, what to think, what to worry about. And so, as also our topics of keen discussion lately, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, suicide, all the way out the gamut of thoughts. We can call them emotions, but I think it really does start with a thought and then an obsessive recurrence of those thoughts. And we all know what that feels like. So we can talk about it in terms of someone who isn't well, or we can talk about it in terms of you and I and everyone we know, because this is the human experience. And you might not be feeling it right now. You might be in the throes of it right now. But if you're going to get down to like the source, I think we have to then talk about the thoughts and beliefs that are making you feel this way.
Yes. And for those of you who are joining, tune in. I mean, tune into yourself. I invite you to call your attention back to this moment and back to the sensations within you. I know that we've walked through this practice on our meditation conversation, but it's really the same practice of noticing. A lot of times, so much in our life can be on autopilot. You know, we're not even aware of what we're believing, thinking about a circumstance. Possibly until we feel that schism or that resistance, or I'll speak for myself, or that stuck bound energy. And what's so fascinating, depending upon whether we attach to the thought or not, because they're coming and going all day, you know, whether we're not in control of that.
Yep.
We have the gift, you know, we can't control the external circumstances, but we can control where we place our attention.
Yep, that's it. What we focus on, we feel, as Tone would say. But as we've started to really pay attention to this, and you say notice, And in the beginning, I'd be like, notice what? Like, what is this mindfulness practice? Like, notice what? And so when you first said notice, I was like, great, that's really going to buck me up when I'm feeling down. And now I see, okay, it's calling attention to this thought that's causing the emotion that's causing your whole life.
Possibly what we're unconscious to. Because, if we're calling our attention to notice what I'm believing and thinking, to notice even what the story, sometimes if, say if I'm really bound or stuck in a circumstance, I'll look to write down, it's like, okay, what am I even frustrated about? What am I hooked by? What am I so charged at? And if I was to have a conversation with you, Mary, oh gosh, mind ego could just have a heyday and be so utterly dramatic and add all of its rationalizations and justifications and assumptions. And yet to write it down in a short sentence, like, what is it for myself that helps me to fix it? And because otherwise, from my own reference, mind, ego mind is building a whole architecture, building this architecture, justifying what I'm believing and thinking, even if it's completely false. I know from my own reference, when I'm stuck in mind and it feels bound, it feels permanent. And for my own, these are just slight things that I find helpful. I'll say to myself, hey, sweetheart, it's only energy. It's simply a thought. And, that lens or that belief that it's only energy, because it's reality. Yeah. And energy can shift. It's not something that's this cement building that, would take such force to move or to plow over. No, it's a thought internally in mind. We are energetic beings. It is energy, and energy moves. And so when I'm bound, I'll remind myself of that, because it feels like a permanent challenge. Yep. It feels like, oh my word, if I'm, down a rabbit hole in something that I'm suffering with and feeling so in mind, either in sadness or frustration or anger or believing whatever thought it might be, that feels permanent in that moment. And those moments feel like the longest moments ever. Isn't it interesting how when we're having a great time and in unbound blue sky, it's like, wee, and time goes like so fast.
And but those moments, like right after you have an interaction with someone that didn't feel right, and then you just process it. And the minutes after that are just like, you see it again, you see it again, you see what they said, you see what you said, you see what you didn't say, you see what you would have said if it happens again.
I speak for myself. It feels hellacious to suffer. It feels like it's going to last forever. It feels never ending. It feels physically, it's not just a mental experience because the body follows mind. It feels grueling. It feels depressive. It's a depressive state. Does that mean I'm depressed? A fixed identity? Does that mean that it's a permanent condition? It means no, it's a wave. It's a wave in this human experience that we all navigate. And I find that extraordinary, that there's nobody that is excluded, no matter where we come from, no matter what life experience, no matter whether no matter who you are. The President of the United States suffers as much as I or you would. Might be different threads, but we all know pain. We all know joy in moments. We've all suffered and felt sadness or anger or frustration. Those are common threads because they follow common beliefs or common thoughts that we all have. It's not even personal.
Human thoughts.
Yes, we believe that we're thinking them. But we're being thought.
Tony would call it like a flavor. What flavor is it for you? Is it mad? Is it sad? Are you scared? Are you worried? Are you anxious? Are you pissed off? Are you frustrated? Whatever you're like, oh yeah, I get this, whatever it is. That's what we're talking about here today.
Yes.
and what that feels like. And you might be like, I don't suffer. Okay. Do you fall right asleep at night without a care in the world? You just drift off blissfully to sleep? Or are you one of the millions of Americans that need to ingest something of some kind to fall asleep? Like, what's going on?
We're living in a different world today where, there's less of us or less of our children, but even us as adults that, are in nature. And being outside is a way to decompress. It's a way to have a broader perception that, oh my gosh, there's all this life happening. You feel the sun on your face, or you hear birds tweeting, or whatever that might be for you. But that, it makes us, for myself anyways, feel so small against something so vast and so large. I just feel like just like an ant would be walking along. We're the same.
Yep.
And so for myself, getting out in nature, and I recognize that a lot of times, we're spending how much time on our phones, on social media, just, these, and then that's training us to what? The younger generation, that I need your love, approval, and acceptance. I need your attention. I need you to confirm what I'm saying or posting is okay, and I want you to like it. That's painful. That's painful to want anybody to like you, because, not everybody does, because of their own references. For those of you listening, maybe some of you might enjoy what I'm saying. Some of you might think, gosh, this is completely redundant, and it might be. Because it's human, and this is where we all meet. Just the other day, I went to the beach, and nobody was on the beach. And I was sitting there, and I was believing I was going to do a meditation. And then I just started feeling the sand, and I was just feeling the sensation of the sand in my feet, in my hands. And I ended up rolling on my tummy in the sand, and I didn't care about being dirty. I didn't care about anything. I was actually just feeling like the earth, feeling my body, my being in that moment. And where there was nothing, there was no stimulus, there was no phone. I had nothing. It was just me, and there was a couple birds trotting around, and that felt free. I'm not doing a great job articulating. I ended up walking into the beach or into the ocean with my clothes on, and that felt honest.
Well, that's a radical change of your physiology.
And just, I don't know, sometimes we can get so civilized of, I need to go get my bathing suit. I have to do this. And it was like, do I?
Yeah.
No, actually, I feel like just immersing right now. And the body is a vehicle. And as we believe these thoughts, and the thoughts are, if they're a suffering state, that affects our bodies, our beings. And so to move in a way that is sincere, no matter what that looks like, even if it looks crazy, I find to be beneficial to get through the bound energy. And then I will go more contemplative and take a look at actually what I'm believing and thinking, to inquire and question it.
Right. If you're listening to this and you are someone who has attended a seminar or an event, if you've done Tony's audio programs or read his early works like Unlimited Power or Awaken the Giant Within, you might be listening to us like, guys, like, you know what to do. It's physiology. You move your body, you make a radical change in your body, right? Change your state. If you've been to a UPW, you know that, and you walk out of those doors and you know what to do. We are suggesting that even though we know that there are times when life happens, and it's between the people that you often love most, or at least care about in some way, that like you feel a level of emotion that even though you know what to do, you get, I call it stuck stupid. Like I get stuck stupid. Of course I have all these tools at my disposal, but as a human being, we still get hooked. And it's like, I can't even think straight, like, let alone like have the wherewithal to be like, yep, physiology first. I should go, make my little move. And it's like, that is exactly what you should do, in fact. But what that radical change in your body might look like walking into the ocean, if you're lucky enough to have an ocean nearby. It might look like, hey, I got to make a sound. I need to make a movement with my body.
Yes.
Go somewhere, wherever you need to go, that you can do it. But mind follows body as well. So if your mind if your stinking thinking has got you down, then your body can snap it out.
Cold plunge many times too.
I will not go in the cold plunge. I will take a nice hot shower. That does the trick for me. Or a bath. some sort of like physical bodily washing to be like, wow, I want to like get this feeling off me. And it is, in the same way that Tony will teach, we could ask someone what they're after, what motivates them, what drives them, what their outcome is, however you want to language that. And they can tell you anything they want to tell you, but dig under it, and it's a feeling that we're all after. So when we're stuck, there's some little red flag waving like, hey, this does not feel good. I would like to feel differently.
And sometimes, that's you just brought up an interesting point. I would like to feel differently. And sometimes we don't.
We don't feel differently?
Well, I'll share my own experience. Sometimes it's just, this is what it is. And allowing that to be in a moment, not that it's not its permanent piece. I'm not saying I'm going to stay there, but just recognizing that, this, whatever it is coming up to the surface, and connecting and having compassion that this must be coming up to the surface to be understood, to be healed.
Yep.
And not, I've certainly distracted myself. I've certainly numbed myself. I've certainly avoided, all the threads that really take me from in the moment from what's actually most real, what's most honest. And I don't even mean honest from an external perspective, just like what is true. And there's no right or wrong way in this human experience. And sometimes it can be really messy, and that's okay. And it's not meant to look a certain way. We don't judge when maybe we do, but the weather today, if it's cloudy or if it's sunny, you might have a preference, but both perspectives are allowed. And it's like, okay, hey, yeah, how could you not?
So you go to gratitude for what you could appreciate, enjoy right now.
At times. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just sitting with what is and just tuning in to it's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay, because what I've recognized about myself too, if I shouldn't be feeling this. Well, I am.
Yep.
And so then I'm judging the experience of the judgment of what that's lunatic. Then I have judgment over judgment, suffering over suffering. And it's disconnecting me from, it's like, all right, how could you not believing what I'm believing? How could you not? It's just compassion for this human experience. It's not always easy. It's not always easy. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. But we do have the gift or the choice to rise above the noise or the confusion of mind, the narratives that are untrue, or we can sit and process, because you really think, what is processing? It's just thinking. So what is thinking? We're usually regurgitating the thoughts that are causing us to suffer, and that's okay until it's not.
Yeah. And so it's an opportunity to apply all those things, like, okay, what's the story that I'm telling myself about what just happened, or what, and it's just, a story is really just that whole, all those thoughts sewn together into a story. So to share a personal example that's related to that, this happened between you and I the other day. I forget what we were discussing with a little passion. And you said to me, Mary, it doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yes.
And I almost lost my mind. Mm-hmm. I was like,
yes,
it means to me what I say it means to me. Mm-hmm. And I understand that it means something different to you, but don't tell me that's not what it means, because I'm telling you that's what it means to me. And in that moment, I realized a few things. I realized wow, okay, I need to get there myself of wow, that is the meaning that I'm giving to this right now. And when I see it there, it feels like it's there all of a sudden in bold face, and it's that's the meaning I gave this. My bad. Like in that moment, I'm often ready to take responsibility and say, I need to make a new meaning because I know better. I know that life is more important than that life is too short. I know that this is a person that I love, and why am I wasting a minute of this life upset with, you know? And so things start to unravel, but for me, it usually comes to a point, and then when I do hit that threshold of big emotion that feels like it's out of my range, then it's like, okay, we're hitting a nerve here.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I don't know which moment because they happen. And it's this human experience. I feel as well that for those that are listening, that you're maybe at a place in your life and you feel like, I just can't do this another minute. And a lot of times when we have those thoughts, we believe that we're alone in that. We believe that it's because of something that's happening in our life that's unique to us. And all of us have felt that. If you think of what suicide, it's like, it's a belief. I can't do this. I can't live this life anymore. And we believe that, and then we act on that. And we believe in those innocent moments that we're the only person that's experiencing that, or that's believing that thought, or that's experiencing that pain. And we've all been there. I've been there, believing I can't do this. I can't do this another minute. Travel back for a moment to some of the most, or one of the most, not some, one of the most painful, what you believe, circumstances of your life that felt like the pain of that circumstance, whether it be a breakup or maybe a loss of a job or possibly a diagnosis in a family member or something. And in those moments, in that period of time that felt like it was never going to end, when you revisit it from this perspective, what do you notice? Do you notice that, gosh, you know what? I didn't know it at the time, but I really grew, or I evolved out of that, or felt like it was the ending and the death, and oh my gosh, it opened this door to something different. And that's also for myself, is just to know that the reminder that life is indeed happening for us, and that from my own perspective, when I suffer most, it's usually what takes me closer to source. It's what takes me closer to God. In those moments when I've been in such pain that I'm literally on my knees and so humbled and so ripped open or stripped down, that it's because if you think of, what's causing that suffering, it's just ego mind anyways. And so what's beneath that are a greater level of coherence of heart when we get out of our own human way, or wanting somebody to behave differently than they are, wanting somebody, your beloved, to look at you a certain way, to say that they love you a certain way, and then they don't, and we're upset about that. And we forget that, oh my gosh, I'm here to offer that love. I'm here to embody and be that love. Mind is such a trickster. It's such a trickster. And so some global beliefs, the global belief for myself that all is well, even no matter what is happening, I'll just say to myself, hon, all is well. And then the reminder that it is not my will. When I want it to be my will, I'm crazy. And my will doesn't bring me the greatest happiness. And I remember hearing or reading, not my will, but thine be done. What did that even mean? What does that even mean? But that there's a divine intelligence greater than our own, and to surrender to that, to recognize that what life is offering us is sincerely a gift. That is a realignment, or a tuning into a greater, not even meaning, a greater reality, a greater reality of the truth of the moment. If I'm upset because it's raining outside, that's on me, but it's raining outside. That's not changing. So I have the choice to appreciate that or not.
So the greater truth for you, it is these meanings that you have given to life, the meaning of life itself, the meaning of what you're here to do with it. Does that Does that feel accurate? Like I'm trying to understand, like, okay, how can people understand that? And I'm trying to understand it myself. So it's like, okay, like,
well, do you believe that there's something larger breathing this breath?
Of course.
Yes. Do you believe that that divine intelligence is orchestrating your life?
I do.
Yes. So when I want to control my life, or I want to control another human being to behave a certain way, and I'm suffering because they're not, they are God's child just like I am, and their being, their isness, who they are.
Yep.
And so when I surrender the control, when I surrender that life needs to look different than I want it to in order for me to be happy, that's simply crazy. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work that way. Right. And so I don't know if that's a belief, or if that's, I suppose it is, or if that's actually accurate. Life is.
Yep.
Life is. And catching up to that reality, I find to be very helpful. And if I think that it should be different, or somebody else should be different, it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's simply brutal. And so having a lens of a belief, and for those of you that are agnostic, if you believe in source, what is the source that created this moment for you to listen right now, for us to share right now, for us to connect right now? Okay, I am that I am. I am light. I am love. And by the way, I don't mean I, me. I mean the I am that is a consciousness that's looking through my eyes and looking through yours, that has a greater intelligence than the narrative of the thoughts that we might be attaching to in that moment. That's something I do. Mm. I'll pray. Mm-hmm. And the other day I was walking up the stairs and I was like, dear Lord, I know that that this is selected for me. This life, this moment is happening for me. Thank you for connecting me to that truth right now. Do I see it in an instant? No, but it just creates that opening, that softening, because that's all it really takes sometimes, is just a softening of the lens of the grip that gets so tight. The reminder of our own innocence, and whomever is that life is placed, alongside of us or across from us, recognizing their innocence as well. I find that ever so helpful.
I think that what you're saying is, what I'm hearing is you take it to some kind of higher identity, and you almost get in touch with your highest values. Like I realize, I'm realizing with the way what you do naturally ties into like what Tony would teach, like why is it so powerful? It's not just Tony. It's like a list as long as my arm of psychologists that say when you're really in touch with your highest values, when you've consciously given time to think about what is values, what do we mean? Just what's most important to you in life. Then when you're hooked in a moment, or you're feeling like this wave of whatever it is, anger, sadness, depression, anxiety, it's like, come back to what is most important to you. And oftentimes it should be so strong and so emotional that that's enough to knock you out. Like if you say you don't lose your connection to God, your identity is so that's so strong for you. It reminds me of this priest that I had in college, a friar, said to me once, Mary, let your problems bring you closer to God, not take you away from God.
Amen.
And that's part of, I think, what you do is when there is an issue or a circumstance or a situation, that's when you're like, okay, God, that's when you really do some talking.
With my whole heart and soul. Because isn't that why we're here? To come closer to life itself, to connect with this divine miracle. And sometimes when things are going, there's so much that we can take for granted. So if it takes something, a thought, an experience, a diagnosis, a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship that decimates us in that moment to, I am not in control, that's humbling to me. To recognize that there is something greater that we're living, that we're serving, that's remarkable. And I believe that is why we are here in this existence, for us all to touch upon that reality. And pain can be a catalyst for that. I don't know if you think of painful times in your life, did they take you closer to God, closer to life, or further away? Sometimes in the moment, it might be further away. When I look back, there's a stripping of what's false. There's a stripping of what's synthetic. There's a stripping of what's no longer needed. And that feels very honest. And that doesn't always happen day to day. That usually happens with something that's really a painful circumstance. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be. A lot of times it has been. I'm speaking from my own reference. Yes, I find that at this stage of my life ever so accurate. If I think of, it took me over 20 some odd years to have our daughter. And I think of the very first miscarriage. I miscarried a little girl at 4.5 months. And that was painful at that time. It felt like that pain would never end. And yet I look back at me, and I have such compassion and also such appreciation that I never had that child at this time. Because number one, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. Mm. And that blows my mind. I wouldn't have had our daughter today. And that really blows my mind and heart. And then all the other miscarriages along the path and all the other what perceived to be loss. I didn't have the wisdom in the moment to realize that life was happening for me. But from this perspective, I recognized with every fiber of my existence that life was happening for me. I'm just catching up to that. I was just catching up to that reality. And that's really beautiful to appreciate that, all of it, because it carves us, it opens us, it calls us, it tunes us, it reminds us, or at least it's an opportunity to be as such.
I agree.
That brings tremendous clarity. And in that clarity, a state of clarity of mind, I experience well-being. I experience more flexibility and clarity of mind. I experience more ease. I experience more peace, more happiness, until the next opportunity when I'm stuck stupid and I've got monkeys flying through mind. And this beautiful process happens all over again, because life is always offering us a moment to wake up.
I think that's beautiful. We hope that this helps you come home.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for this moment. And just know that you're not alone, even when it might feel like you are. We sincerely all meet in this thing called life. Those are certainly all the attributes that has led me here. So I'm thrilled to be with you and meet you. Thank you.
We're on the same team. If you're listening, we're on the same team. See you next time.
Bye for now.
Go on.
You do a great job with that, Mary B. So where do you want to go with this, Money Pro?
Well,
why don't you ask me a question to start with here? You be the interviewer here, and I'll give you my best answer, since you're the one wanting to make this go a certain direction.
I have a question for Tone, too, when you're ready.
Okay, great. Where would you like to start?
You want me to start, or are you ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Are you ready?
You can see this is definitely off the cuff, as
well,
you're saying.
And by the way,
this is how she wants it.
I like its organic nature.
I do too. I love that too.
And it's actually very... it's how we relate. It's
real
how
life.
Real life and spontaneous and playful.
Yes.
And unexpected.
Yes. I just like when we start something to have a clear plan, so you can see it's a different approach, so we can deliver the most value in the shortest period of time. But I think if you're a listener, you probably appreciate different gears, and this one's a different gear. That's the whole purpose of a podcast. So I appreciate your leadership in this area.
Thank you. And I also appreciate your willingness, because it gives, for those of you that are home, and many of you listen to Tony on stage or maybe in an audio program, I have the privilege to live with Tone. And it's a different aspect and quality of you, a different facet of you. And you're so beloved. And I just enjoy sharing that part of you as well.
That's very sweet. Thank you.
We like showing off Tone's flexibility.
We were going to a car dealership, an upper level quality car dealership. I won't mention the name of the brand, but it was a very high level brand.
German engineering.
German engineering. Thank you very much, Mary. And we're trying to get there, and we're trying to work this thing out. And my wife, in the middle, we've picked out the car and everything else. I'm with the guy, he's, that's Tony Robbins. Oh my God. I was like, yeah, great. It was a good deal here for my wife and everything else. And she pops open this thing of tuna, this canister of tuna.
Tuna salad.
Tuna salad. And she's eating it in the middle, and it smells like crazy. And she's like, I just have to do this because otherwise I get hangry. And she's right.
The other day, I apologized to you, recognizing that stylistically, sometimes I can be forceful, aggressive. I want to get into the ring of life. I want to tidy it up. That's completely selfish. That's all about me. I want it to be over. I want to be connected deeply, and yet not respecting or honoring in that moment that you needed space and distance. And so for myself, admitting apologizing for that. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize the impact to me coming, hello, knocking on your door felt like the very natural thing to do for who? For me. I wasn't including your experience. I wasn't including that for you, time or space would feel kind or supportive. It was completely selfish. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be connected. I wanted to be back home inside of myself and inside of the containership of our friendship, our relationship.
I love that. So there's nothing to apologize for. And it helps to have an awareness, no matter who you surround yourself with, that their model of the world might be totally different.
Yes.
And I think that was the rub. It wasn't lack of love or not caring. We both wanted to repair things. It was just a difference of rules and models of how we actually go about repairing.
Yes, and poorly executed on my part.
No, not true.
But still, that was my perception. Therefore, I wanted to tidy that up, and now, we haven't really had a moment since then. But I'm very aware. All right, hey, we're getting a pickle, feeling a little hot. You walk out the door. Bless. I'm going to work on inside my inner world, and then when I bump into you, hey, Mare, I don't have to be demanding, and I can be very demanding for those that are listening. And so that felt kind. That felt kind to be honest with myself. Therefore, I could be honest with you. And it felt kind to understand that we're different, and that's okay.
It's very kind.
That's that.
It's very kind, and I appreciate it. And it's also, okay, so you might make that modification, and then my work also becomes, hey, she's probably going to come knocking on my door any moment.
Oh, no.
I can be ready. Like, what? And
I'm not knocking.
Amount of time.
You're going to be in there all by yourself.
How much time am I going to be in there? How much time do I need to process, for example?
As long as you want.
And so my work will be, hey, she's just coming to do the same thing the place that I'm trying to get to. But I do think it's helpful to acknowledge, like, sometimes if it just feels like, why is this person acting this way? They're probably thinking, like, why is this person acting this way? Our models of the world are different. Here we are. That's okay. We don't have to change the other person's model of the world to get along with them just fine.
True.
Or love them a whole bunch and live really harmoniously and still have some shakeouts like humans will, and then be like, oh, what did I learn from this? What's my blind spot? How do I still need to grow? There's more work to be done. There's always more work to be done. Inside the garden of the mind.